Have you ever wondered how people in ancient times built the now historical structures we have today, or what they believed in? How the Egyptians built the pyramids, or in this case, the Greeks built the Parthenon? What was their religious beliefs and views on how the world worked? The Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee is a living replica of history that we might have never got to see otherwise. These historical documents, items, and buildings are all we have left in where we come from and how we got to the point we are today. The government website labeled the Parthenon and the museum's own website tells us of the things that you can see and experience as well as their historical backgrounds. When going to the Parthenon, we get to see statues like the recreation of Phidias' famous 42-foot Athena sculpture, as well as getting to see the stories told in ancient Greek mythology from the East and West pediments. The first point of interest that I'm going to tell you about from the Parthenon is the statue of Athena. When the Parthenon replica was built in around the 1920s, it was almost exactly like the original. The difference between the original and the replica being the colossal or giant Athena Parthenos. Mark Cartwright, in his article labeled Athena Parthenos on World History Encyclopedia, states that it was around 11.5 meters or 37.7 feet tall, and was made of carved ivory for the flesh and gold for the rest of it. The statue was not in the replica due to the low funds. In 1982, the city had several sculptors submit their proposals to recreate the Athena statue. After a long deliberation, they chose Nashville native Alan LeQuire because of his commitment and skill to accuracy. When LeQuire started his research, he found that the Athena statue had been lost by 400 AD, and there was very little historical documentation on it. He depended on modern scholars and archaeological information about the statue. The Parthenon's website in the original Athena section claims that from his research, he found that the ancient authors, such as Poggians, referred to the Athena statue in its writings. After he concluded his research, LeQuire started work on the statue. He did his best to replicate the work of Phidias, the sculptor of the original Athena. The Athena statue was constructed from 1982 to 1990. In 2002, they brought in expert gilder Lou Reed to start the gilding and painting process, which took around 4 months and left the Athena statue looking much more like the original one. The Athena statue has been one of the most famous exhibits in the Parthenon and has been an immensely popular tourist attraction for many years in Nashville. Second, I'm going to tell you about the West pediments. The Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee holds the remnants of the original pediments as a cast of what most deem the acceptable interpretations. The pediments of the Parthenon are 2 sets of statues made from Pentelic marble. These have been said to have been made by several artists, including Erechritos and Phidias. The west pediment would have been seen at the side most visible when ascending the Athenian Acropolis. The west pediment shows a story of the contest between Athena and Poseidon to determine who would become the patron of Athens to the citizens. Poseidon, the god of the sea, offered saltwater spring by breaking a rock with his trident. This represented a powerful navy and a prosperous or successful sea trade. Athena, goddess of wisdom, offered an olive tree by breaking a rock with her spear, and this represented olives, wood, and oil, which the citizens felt were more valuable, and made her the patron goddess. The West pediments tell us the story of 2 gods, one that offered power and another that offered help. The East pediments tell us another one of the many stories during this time at the ancient Parthenon. Third, I'm going to tell you about the last key point of interest. Which are the East pediments. The East pediments would have been seen above the ancient entrance to the temple. The East pediment shows us the story of the birth of Athena, who sprang as a fully grown warrior from the head of her father Zeus. This pediment shows Nike, the goddess of victory, flying to put the victor's wreath on top of Athena's helmet. This was a nod towards Greece's then recent defeat of the Persians. The East pediment shows us the story of the birth. On the end of the left side, you can see Helios and Selene, deities of the sun and moon, pulling their chariot, which suggests that Athena's birth was at dawn. When when you can see both the sun and the moon. Sadly, all of the central figures between Iris on the left and Hestia on the right had been removed during the conversion of the Parthenon to a Christian church after the 6th century CE. Scholars today are still trying to figure out who the original figures were and where the arrangements are to put them. These pediments tell us the story of victory, achievement, and family. The Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee lets us see artworks, architecture, and most importantly, the history of ancient Greeks and what they had believed in. From the points of interest that I have discussed, I hope you will consider going to the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. These pieces of history, like the Athena statue and stories told from the east and west pediments, are a look into the lives of ancient Greeks. If you are in Tennessee, consider going to the Parthenon and seeing the things from ancient history. When going to the Parthenon, you won't wonder how ancient Greeks built things. You'll get to see it.